Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Now, Apple is about to launch the iPhone SE Mark IV. Samsung has launched the S25 range, and the two launches have one thing in common: artificial intelligence. JJ Clark, who produces this podcast, we're going to talk about the iPhone SE4 first. At the time of recording, Apple actually hasn't dropped it. We're all expecting it any moment, but thanks to the modern reportage and journalism, we kind of know what's going to be in it, aka Mark Gurman of Bloomberg, who always gets the features ahead of a schedule, and that entails a 6.1-inch screen, which is a lot bigger than the current iPhone SE. It's going to have a 48-megapixel single camera, and crucially, it's going to have Apple Intelligence. So it's going to come with a chip that's powerful enough to run Apple Intelligence. Now, I don't know, do you use iPhone or Android?
I use Android, Samsung.
Okay, have you ever been tempted to buy an iPhone?
I used to have an iPhone, but I had two iPhones before, but just kept dropping them.
What model did you have?
The iPhone 12.
12. Okay, so fairly recent then. And what did you switch to?
Samsung A25. So
okay, so
complete difference.
Yeah, I'm not going to say what I think about the Samsung A25. But so to you now, if you were thinking of moving back, how would this grab you? What if you were going to move to an iPhone? What model? A lot of people, they really do want the 16 Pro. They want the 16 or the 16 Pro. Would that be you?
No, I think the SE, the sort of the democratized version, I think appeals to me just because I know how hard I am on phones anyway. I just tend to drop them, even with the cases and everything like that. So an iPhone that's has all the mod cons, or some of them, that comes in at around $500, €480.
Yeah.
That would appeal to me for sure.
A little bit more expensive in Ireland, as always is, by about €50 or €60. But yeah, I take your point. What's interesting to me about this iPhone, and by the way, Apple is also expected to drop a MacBook Air M4 and a new iPad Air as well. But there are actually significant upgrades in the hardware of this phone, because the old iPhone SE was a 4.7-inch model, and this is the definitive end to any buttons on iPhones as well. But other than the screen size, there's not much that you would say that, from a hardware perspective, that Apple is introducing here. This is sort of similar to like an iPhone 13 or iPhone 14 that you might buy. What they are introducing is artificial intelligence, and they're going to try and sell the iPhone SE as having access to Apple Intelligence. Now, it's really interesting. I review hundreds of phones, not hundreds of phones every year, but I have over the last few years. So I track the differences in real time that they make on your everyday living. And I can honestly say that I think that AI is one of the most hyped and least productive iterations that they've introduced. Like every other big upgrade that phones have had, the cameras, for example, massive difference on my life and on most people's lives, whether they'll admit it or not. Now, most people will take photos with their camera. They will take videos. They do use Instagram. They do use TikTok. Other differences as well. Screen size been creeping up and up and up. The top iPhones and Androids are now 6.7, 6.8, 6.9 inches, almost 7 inches in size. You wouldn't have dreamt of that 6 or 7 years ago. A standard tablet size 10 years ago was 7 or 8 inches. Now that's a regular phone. But artificial intelligence is kind of, it's a thing that obviously the phone makers are chasing, and they think that they're going to create a personal assistant. But so far, there's almost no single feature that I, for example, have internalized into my daily use. And to illustrate this, I think we should look at the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra.
Yeah.
I have that in with me because I've been reviewing it for the last few weeks. And if you haven't seen this review, it's available on the on independent.ie. So The skinny on this is, it is a terrific phone, but it is the least updated phone maybe that I've ever reviewed from the Samsung 24 Ultra. So beginners recap on Samsung S25s. You've got the S25, the S25 Plus, and S25 Ultra. And the S25 Ultra is the absolute top of the range. And the reason it's the top of the range is because it has the most powerful camera. So it has a zoom up to 100 times, digital zoom. It has something that almost no other phone has, which is a little stylus that comes out of the end of the phone like that, the S Pen. Now, most people don't use it. It's kind of nice to have if you want. It's the most powerful. It has the best display. It's the best all-round package if you want the best phone that you can buy, certainly in the Android world, okay? And the S25 Ultra is absolutely that. The problem is it's almost identical, and I mean almost identical to the S24 Ultra, which is last year's model.
And the difference in price, how much is it going for?
It's gone for the same price as the S24 Ultra went for last year, which is it starts at around 1,400, I think.
1,469.
Something like that, and up to about, I think it's up to about 1,600 or 1,700. So that's the only difference in price is whether you get the entry level 256 gigabyte storage, which for me now is not enough anymore because I have so many photos and videos, up to 1 terabyte of storage, which is now what I buy. I buy the terabyte storage.
Right. And that's because you're a journalist rather than,
Because I have so many, I take so many photos, videos, and also because I tend to be, because I have so many of those, I can be sort of tardy in trying to manage them and organize them. Like I'm paying Apple 30 quid a month at the moment for 6 terabytes of iCloud.
Okay. Yeah.
Partially my own fault.
Yeah.
Okay?
You don't have a sort of jettison, every month kind of.
No, and I could do, and it's one of the. It's like making a will. You kind of think you're always going to do it in about 2 weeks.
Yeah,
time.
It's the health insurance, paradox.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the thing that they're selling the S25 Ultra on, which again is a great phone, it's a really good phone, but they're selling it on the Galaxy AI, the artificial intelligence. They've done a couple of things. They've integrated Google Gemini into the phone. So if you do a long press on the side button here, it brings up Gemini, and you can ask it a question there, and it's really good. It works really, really well. The problem is that other than maybe say setting a date in your calendar or I'm trying to think of other things that I actually use on the phone.
Like reminders. It's like that's essentially what it is. It's not. It's meant to be kind of like blow away kind of, things that you would really help you out in your daily life.
No. So when you think of artificial intelligence and personal assistants, really what you're thinking of is something that's going to be able to intuitively remind you where you are, what you're supposed to be doing, who you're supposed to be meeting. Was there something that you've forgotten, for example? What's happening in the next few hours or the next day that you might need to know? Stuff like that, like an actual personal assistant.
Right.
Something that's useful.
Yeah. Like you were talking to Tom earlier on. Tom wants to go to this restaurant,
Absolutely, yeah.
What type of restaurant it is, how do you get parking near it?
Yeah. Now, neither the S25 Ultra nor Apple's Apple Intelligence, which, by the way, isn't fully functional in the EU, but that's a different story, they don't come anywhere close to that. Instead, what you have to do is you have to put in specific queries, often relating to specific apps. And often those apps don't play with each other. So if you use Microsoft Outlook, for example, which a lot of people do, a lot of people listening to this podcast will use Microsoft for email and other stuff and calendar. If you use Gemini on the S25 Ultra, that won't play naturally with Outlook. So you now have to sort of try and sync your Samsung calendar with your Outlook calendar behind the scenes to try and get it to work in a roundabout way. And you're just kind of left thinking, this. And by the way, Samsung is talking about charging for this at the end of next year for Galaxy AI. So they're loading the S25 Ultra and all S25 models, indeed, with Galaxy AI. They're loading a lot of the other models as well, S23s and S24s with it too. And they're saying that next year you might have to pay for it. And I'm just trying to figure out, why would I bother paying for this?
And is there, like, as in you've had the phone for how long now?
I've had the phone now for almost a month.
Okay, and is there a bedding in period when you're sort of dealing with the Samsung interface and, you know, the AI, like I know you mentioned in your article about having to use the native browser rather than Chrome? Like that is very frustrating.
And that's been a problem with Samsung phones for a while, is that this bloatware issue where they keep trying to get you to use Bixby, which is their AI assistant, or the native Samsung browser or a Samsung calendar. And obviously you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to replicate the iOS ecosystem because it works then across, you know, the Galaxy tablets and Galaxy Watch and other devices. And it makes it easier for them to synchronize features. But they lost those battles years ago. Nobody uses Samsung Internet Browser, like voluntarily. Maybe they're forced to when something opens on their phone. Or maybe they have to use Calendar to try and sync with Outlook. But it's not a first choice feature. And so it feels like what they call bloatware, an app that you don't want to use, but you're being forced to use. You see it with the Samsung. Samsung has its own app store as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anyone who goes into the Samsung app store, you know, to look for things.
Right.
So now there are some useful features which AI has brought for us. So one that is potentially useful is transcription of a phone call. So I'm a journalist. I talk to people. I will often record their interviews. I'll use an app like Otter or any other transcription app. And when I'm talking to them, I'll put the phone on loudspeaker and I'll have another device, maybe a phone or a laptop, and I'll just start recording it and it transcribes it word for word. And it's usually very, very good. So the AI is getting to a point now where it can record and transcribe your call as you're making the call. That's fine, except what I found was, first of all, it gives a warning to say that this call is being recorded. That's absolutely fine. It's no problem. But it is a little bit of a buzzkill.
Right.
It's different from you saying that I'm going to record this. When you hear a robotic voice saying, this call is being recorded.
It's so jarring. It's like if you've ever had a microphone shoved in your face. You're absolutely, like you begin to be conscious of every single syllable that comes out of your mouth.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, even the stuff that I do find useful, there are other options and services that I can use instead of the AI on the Galaxy or on the iPhone, and all of which is kind of leading me to believe that if someone were to ask me, well, should you get the S25 Ultra?
Right.
I would genuinely say, look, if you want a top-of-the-range Android phone, this is top of the range, with great cameras, a great screen, very reliable, quite tough as well. You talked about dropping the phone. This is very, very tough. Then I would say, absolutely, it's a really good phone. If you have like an S23 Ultra or an S24 Ultra, there's no way you should upgrade to this.
Okay.
Like not in a million years. It's just, there's not enough that's different in it.
And they've invested as well in the chip as well. Does that make any difference? The Qualcomm
Snapdragon 8 Pro or 8 Elite for Galaxy. Yeah, it does. It's 30 or 40% faster. You'll mainly notice that if you're gaming. You won't notice it at all if you're doing regular tasks.
And battery power, is it any better than the S24?
I haven't noticed much of a difference at all. It may be a little bit better. I haven't noticed much of a difference before. Right. The Galaxy S23 or the Galaxy Ultra phones are not the best battery phones on the market. They're very good. They're, in the top tier, but they're not the best ones. Oddly, Apple's iPhone Pro Maxes became the best battery phones about 2 or 3 years ago, but they have now been superseded as well by the new Chinese brands, the Oppos, the Vivos, some of them that you can't really get here. I think Xiaomi's beats it for battery life now as well.
How are they doing that? Is it like, some function of...
They physically have bigger batteries. So because all these phones, the Chinese manufacturers tend to come in with the biggest screens. So they really are getting close to hitting 7 inches.
Okay.
And they just put in very large batteries. They put in like 6,000 milliamp batteries, whereas typically a phone like this will have maybe a 5,000, 5,200 milliamp battery. The iPhones have even smaller batteries than that because they're super efficient the way they
Yeah.
build iPhones. But battery life is very good. I never finish the day with less than 25-30%. It's very good. It will definitely do the job for you. This is a great phone.
Yeah.
Really good. It's just no different to the S24 Ultra.
And just finally on the S Pen, I suppose is it a bit of a gimmick? The S Pen, and did it lose its Bluetooth functionality?
Yeah, it lost its Bluetooth functionality. I do think it's a gimmick. If you see there, you can just take it out and just start writing away, and I quite like it. I think it's a nice little doodler. I've sketched out ideas for articles, thoughts on stuff. And I mean, I can do that just in notes, tapping away.
Yeah.
But it's just a slightly different way of doing it. It's a little bit more of a thoughtful way. Not as easy to correct and edit. You kind of a bit jarring in that you have to rub stuff out and you have to try and move text around. But it's actually a really nice. It's a really nice little feature. Would I buy a phone for the S Pen? Absolutely not.
Right.
But you're right. They did take away Bluetooth functionality because you used to be able to set your phone behind you or on a ledge, take the S Pen out and then click the button on it to take a selfie of you, to take a photograph of you.
Oh, cool.
They said nobody was using it. So they've absolutely ditched that. So I don't know where we're going now with artificial intelligence in these phones. Obviously with the iPhone SE Mark IV, we're going to get Apple Intelligence with that. You tend not to bet against Apple in the long run because once they get into a program of innovation, they tend to throw huge resources at it. And within a couple of years, they tend to come up with one or two features that become really, really sticky and that you integrate it into your everyday life. Now, they have misses as well. I don't know anyone who uses Memoji, animated emoji. I don't know anyone who uses that. There's a couple of other things they've introduced in recent years as well, which have been sort of hit and miss. That's not even talking about the Vision Pro, which they're starting to de-escalate their investment program.
Right.
It looks like Apple is starting to
that they've
lower
almost admitted failure, or admitted.
Well,
doing so well.
I think to be fair to Apple, failure is a harsh word in the sense that they have sold a bunch of Vision Pros, and some of the people can see the technical breakthroughs that the Vision Pro brings. It's an amazing device, but it still can't find a consistent audience. Most people I only know two people who bought a Vision Pro. They're both in the States. And only one of them uses it more than kind of once every 6 weeks. The other one takes it out of the shelf every 2 months, has another go on it, tells himself, yeah, this is fantastic, but there's nothing I can do with this.
Right. And just on I suppose the intelligence question, when it's sitting in your phone, like the Apple Intelligence or the AI assistant in the Samsung phones, is it that we're less impressed by software than we are by hardware? Like a phone camera that can zoom in 100 times is far more impressive, or is it we haven't hit that inflection point where we're like, okay, we can see the value in AI in your phones?
No, I don't think so at all. I think software is an absolute game changer, can be a game changer for phones. If you had a device that could absolutely be a real assistant, a real personal assistant, that's what all these systems are driving towards. You will buy that device. I'm trying to think of software updates and upgrades that have actually proven to be very, very useful in recent years. I think if you look at the UIs, if you look at iOS, for example, using one of the reasons that iPhone has such high sales in countries like Ireland is because of the operating system. So overall, people's opinions will differ on this, but overall, iOS is a slightly smoother, slightly easier operating system to use than Android overall.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Android always has a few features that iOS doesn't have. And they're usually earlier with innovative features. But the way that the whole thing works together isn't quite as smooth, isn't quite as stable. It's not as reassuring to somebody who's not that into tech as iOS is on an iPhone. And that is purely a software issue.
Right.
Apple's secret sauce is as much the software as it is the hardware, and it always has been. Apple was never first with any of the top hardware features. It wasn't first with big screens. It wasn't first with the top cameras. It wasn't first with high-end displays. I mean, if you go for an iPhone 16 these days, it still has a 60 hertz display. That is, that's a medium grade, it's a low grade almost refresh rate for a modern smartphone. You buy any €400 mid-ranger and it has a 90 hertz or 120 hertz display on it, which means it scrolls more smoothly.
Yeah,
it's more buttery.
I even think about like the Mac laptops, like how quickly they switch on when compared to other laptops, and that's purely software based.
Oh, I mean,
and you're
once
just not
you give
around.
anything away to Microsoft, you're in trouble. I mean, you're not from functionality point of view. Like the middle-aged guys in the IT department think it's all great, but I mean, in terms of actually using something quickly and responsively, and that doesn't, mysteriously reboot on you because it's implementing its upgrades despite you not wanting it to. No, you're in trouble the moment you hand anything over to Microsoft, and unfortunately PCs and Dell and HP. The reason why Dells and HPs and Lenovo's, the reason why they're not sexy and never will be. Every couple of years they keep trying to come out with these, look at this cool machine. No, a Dell will never be sexy. It'll be incredibly functional, efficient, good value, powerful. Mm-hmm. They've some good gaming stuff. A lot of the PCs, if you want a real proper gaming laptop, it has to be a PC. Mm-hmm. So in very niche verticals, they're very successful and they're best in class. But in terms of being sexy machines or machines that the normal person thinks, I really like that device, or I really want one of those, there's no comparison between a Dell, a HP, or a MacBook. I mean, there just isn't. Like, There's nobody who kind of says, I can't wait, I'm getting a new Dell. There's nobody who says that. Whereas people will say, I'm thinking of getting a MacBook Pro. I really like the look of it. Or there's a new MacBook Air come. I'd really quite fancy that. I really like the way it works. Nobody says that about a PC.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point in I used to get a lot of trolling and a lot of, backlash from the handful of Windows fans that there were in Ireland when I used to say stuff like this, and they say, Apple is just marketing. It's just fashion. No, it's not. I mean, it's clearly not. It's clearly more than that. Unless you think that people are just idiots and cheap. Like, you're spending £1,500 on a laptop. There's more to it.
Yeah, it's like
than
so
just they like the color, because the color is the same color. It's just silver.
Yeah, and like as in markets are a good neutral indicator of value. Like they're
absolutely
they will.
They tend to be efficient now. Not all the time, but markets tend to give you a good idea of what is working and what is not. And like the MacBook Air, best-selling laptop in the world, the MacBook Pro, second best-selling laptop in the world, and they tend to be the more expensive laptops. So there is a reason why people are buying them.
Right.
But anyway, we're supposed to be talking about phones, but we ended up talking about intelligence. By the way, it's worth pointing out that the AI features that we're talking about are also to be applied to laptops and laptop systems. And Microsoft, who I've spent 5 minutes slagging off, do also have their own AI plan in place. Copilot is something that's very high profile assistant they've been trying to roll out with some success.
Right.
A lot of people think that not worth it, but some people like it, and some people use the features. So look, I think we'll leave it in saying that I think AI is still at an early stage in phones. At the moment, it does not impress. It simply does not impress. It may do in the next year, in the next versions, because there's so much investment going into it. And Samsung is very good at long-term investment, like Apple. Of all of the phone companies, you would say Samsung and Apple are the two companies who invest with medium to long-term visions. So I've no doubt that in 2 years' time, I'll be sitting here and we'll be talking about the S27 Ultra. And I'll be saying, do you remember when I was slagging off AI and saying that it just couldn't really do stuff? It will actually, this S27 Ultra is actually really good. And this is what I did this morning and it helped me out with it. I've no doubt that that's going to happen, but we ain't there yet.
Right.
And I don't think we will be for the next few months. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. JJ Clark, who produces this podcast, thank you very much for joining me today. Gav Hennessy was on sound, and I'm Adrian Weckler. You've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show, and we'll talk to you soon.